You know, I've read a lot of really frustrating and annoying videos since starting my YouTube channel, and this might be the worst article, worst story I've ever had to cover. It's this stupid, idiotic Netflix special known as Adolescence, one that is rooted in complete and utter misandry or hatred of men, one that's entire purpose is to take real-life history and technically whitewash it, to demonize the group known as young white men, to make the entirety of all young white boys as an entire group of monsters, of people looking to do nothing more than victimize young girls, stab them, rape them, kill them, do whatever they want to get out their masculine, toxic rage that every single young white boy just so happens to have. This is one of the most frustrating things I've ever had to look at because of how utterly widespread and accepted this ideology is in modern culture. To the point that people are aborting their babies just so they don't have to have a boy because they think any boy they raise will be a rapist. We have kids going out here and literally dealing with this stuff. You know, actually, we have actual kids who in England have stabbed young girls. Only problem is none of them are white. But this special Netflix show that's being shown in the UK Parliament race swapped that one kid, and the white kid's the villain. All the other kids are innocent victims around him. And it's all, of course, because the manosphere is the problem. It's all because men are out here talking about their problems. Men and boys are suffering more than ever. Dating is miserable. People are just not being able to live to the standard that they should be allowed to live to. And when you're trying to address it, you're labeled as a woman-hating monster. We're being told that Adolescence, which is about some boys who have been disenfranchised, when they act out on their disenfranchisement, they're nothing more than killers. And that's all they're saying, is that anyone who engages in the manosphere will eventually fall to the point of being a killer, according to these people. Now, before I ramble any further on, like, subscribe, and let's actually get into this. Now, Adolescence is something that I've talked about a decent amount with one of my good friends, Theo Snodgrass, over at his channel on his show Touch Grass, which is an amazing space where a couple of us guys get together and just talk about some of the issues, and it's a fun time. And one of the issues we've discussed a lot is this topic known as HR culture, where everything's turned to the hyper-sterilized world of HR culture, where men aren't allowed to do whatever men actually want to do, and this show is a perfect example of it. Many of the scenes in the show really highlight this, because anytime that he tries to get any of his emotions out, he's immediately shamed for it. Now, coming from Fanipulse, Netflix Adolescence accused of being part of a calculated ideological assault on Western identity and memory, and that is exactly what it is, with reports coming straight from the developer of this drama coming out and saying that this thing needs to be presented to the UK Parliament as proof of a problem of extreme misogyny and a culture of manosphere toxicity, where they're saying that this is the accurate history of white people within England, something that is demonstrably false and entirely based in extreme bigotry, not to borrow one of their phrases. According to Netflix, the series tells the story of how a family's world is turned upside down when a 13-year-old Jamie Miller, played by Owen Cooper, is arrested for the murder of a teenage girl who goes to his school. Co-creator Stephen Graham told Netflix one of his aims was to ask, what is happening to our young men these days, and what are the pressures they face from their peers, from the internet, and from social media? And the pressures that come from all those things are as difficult for kids here as they are the world over. He also shared that he was inspired to make this show based on a real-life incident. He said, there was an incident where a young boy allegedly stabbed a girl. It shocked me. I was thinking, what's going on? What's happening in society where a boy stabs a girl to death? What's the inciting incident here? And then it happened again, and it happened again, and it happened again. I really just wanted to shine a light on it and ask, why is this happening today? What's going on? How have we come to this? Well, I've got some answers for you, and it's like I mentioned earlier, that HR culture that's really indoctrinated the entire world over. The kind of thing that shames young boys and men for just being young boys and men. You know, we live in a society where if a kid doesn't want to sit in his seat during school, they're going to put him on Adderall. They're going to drug him up until he's as passive as possible because they don't want to deal with a rambunctious boy. And that's just how boys are. They're inherently hyperactive by nature, and we're trying to pathologize the normalcy of this behavior and turn it into something more severe. We have schools that are cutting recess times, limiting the activities you're allowed to do outside. A recent article I read was covering this about how most activities you're able to do, you're not allowed to play tag because it highlights physical differences in young children. You can't play duck, duck, goose because it's inherently about, I don't know, discriminating against a ghost. And that's what the school boards are saying when they're making the decision to ban these activities. They're actually basing it off of this hypersensitive culture in nature, taking away anything that could give you any form of resilience and forcing you to live in a hypersensitized world where you aren't allowed to experience any kind of hardship that they don't approve of. And then on top of that, the approved of hardships are even worse. Men aren't asking girls out, not because they're not interested, not because of the rise in homosexuality or anything. They're not asking girls out because they're terrified of the rejection, because the rejection they'll receive is so utterly severe. It used to be a simple no, no thank you, whatever, and now it's an actual mocking point. The amount of videos I've seen where young boys are being shamed on social media all because they asked a girl out one time. She has to pull out her phone and record and shame him, and then when anyone tries to defend them, you're just a misogynist, and they all side with the girl shaming the boy. The dangers of asking a girl out are so utterly severe that no one's doing it anymore, as Gen Z is having significantly less dates, and if I remember correctly, it was approximately 60% of Gen Z men haven't asked out a woman in person ever. And as a Gen Zer myself, that is a huge, massive problem for me and the people I know. It's something that everyone I know is dealing with in spades. And then when it comes to trying to treat some of these issues that lead to these problems in young men and boys, the APA, the American Psychological Association, for over 5 years had the definition for masculinity that it labeled it as an inherently toxic thing. As in, masculinity was inherently bad. You couldn't be masculine and be a good person or even a decent person. You had to be a monster if you were a masculine individual. And that was their modus operandum. Masculinity was inherently pathologized and inherently demonized, and a part of men in therapy was to remove the masculinity so that they could be better feminists. I wish I was making this shit up, and I can provide sources if need be. So honestly, what you're doing over here, Stephen Graham, is you're pissing up shit creek. You're not able to do anything because every single thing that you've built, the culture that you have perpetuated, is exactly why we're living in this absolute hell of a culture you think is the problem. And that's not even getting into the real issue, one of the issues that will be covered later in this article, referring to the absolute rewriting of history. The young boy pictured here, the actor, who seems like a normal person, isn't representative of the boys who are stabbing young girls. See, this story is based off of a real story, as was mentioned by Graham earlier, and this is the real boy in question who actually committed that crime. So not only are we doing anything except for treating the problem, we're not even looking at the right problem. And this is where author Laura Dodsworth, who wrote the Free Your Mind novel, describes the show as the latest example of a long lineage of media manipulation shaping public perception, fueling moral panics, and justifying censorship. Many assume propaganda only flourishes under authoritarian regimes, but television can enable all regimes to tighten their role using soft autocracy. Just like drugs, entertainment undoes your sophistication, relaxes you, and makes you more suggestible, she notes. I think it's really funny she says that propaganda can thrive in environments that aren't authoritarian, as if the UK isn't an authoritarian nation. Look who's got the power. They live in a one-party state. Even the conservative Tory party is still farther left than our Democratic Party. They really are living the uniparty hellhole where no one is allowed to have freedom of speech. Freedom of speech has been completely stripped. Out of all the countries in the world, the one with the most arrests for social media posts last year was the United Kingdom. They had more arrests than Russia did. We have stories, countless stories, of young women getting more jail time for insulting their rapists than the foreign rapists are getting in jail time. The UK isn't a free country anymore. It is the autocracy that they're warning us about. But Dodsworth continues, the BBC once convinced people that spaghetti grew on trees. Ghostwatch made viewers believe that they were watching a live haunting. Once a young man even killed himself out of fear. Well, that's not too much of a loss then. The UK's Behavioural Insights team, the Nudge Unit, openly admits to shaping TV programming to influence public behaviour. A collaboration with Sky aimed to nudge viewers to decarbonize their lifestyle. This is not new, she added. Their reports say behaviour change via broadcasting and traditional media has historically been aimed at improving public health, boosting gender equality, and reducing violence. Imagine the potential for emissions reduction if the same method were used to encourage sustainable behaviours. If you've ever felt TV dramas seem too neatly aligned with social or political narratives, you're right. The historically is an emission of social engineering, and it doesn't stop at climate change, she wrote. And this is true. One of the ways that you can spread a political message is through just normalcy and appearance in TV. Now, the problem is you need a competent writer to do that. You see, the CW network has been doing this for a long time with shows like Arrow, Supergirl, and whatnot, where they really push this ham-fisted, socialist, and feminist-themed messaging in there to the point of excess. And we know that it works because there was a study done a few years ago that found that the best way to reduce homophobic tendencies in somebody was just to let them passively watch a couple episodes of Will and Grace. But the problem is that the propaganda has to be done in the right way, in a way that isn't too forceful, and when you do it forceful, you actually get a lot of pushback. And that's the issue here with Adolescence. If Adolescence was just like lightly hinting at it, was just kind of able to be swept under the rug, some people would watch it and get affected by the brainwashing, but nobody would ever be in an outrage. And the problem is, because you did it so ham-fistedly, you're creating outrage over this, to the point that even feminists are coming out here and saying, hold up, this is a little unfair. She then shared another example. The pandemic saw an explicit push to integrate government messaging into scripts. A scriptwriter interviewed for Free Your Mind was invited to educating audiences on the COVID-19 vaccine, a summit to embed vaccine messages into film and TV shows. And I remember this being shoved heavily into Brooklyn Nine-Nine, especially when I was still watching that show before I realized it fell off the deep end into politics. This is overt propaganda, she declared. It isn't even hidden, because those shaping it see nothing wrong with it. But the real danger isn't what we're told to think, it's that we absorb messages uncritically while relaxed, entertained, and off guard. Next, she brought it back to Adolescence. Adolescence is the latest example. Regardless of the intentions of the program makers, the Netflix drama is fueling a moral panic in Parliament to justify tighter internet censorship. But the drama is more fictional than it should be. The killer is a white boy, unlike the real-life teenagers this series appears more likely to be based on. And this backs off a pretty big problem that we have right now, with indictments coming in to demand that X be more censored, with the EU demanding that X prevents the spread of alt-right misinformation. That's just normal information, just normal truth they're demanding to be stopped, and they're demanding to know exactly how the rules are being applied so they can better enforce censorship in the EU. With a lot of foreign countries, including Brazil, literally outlawing the use of X in those countries, or threatening to outlaw the use of X in those countries so they can better protect the state-enforced echo chamber, because X breaks the rules. And so if they deem that the manosphere is responsible for this outburst of hatred, then they can use that as an excuse to go in and lock down access to it. They can put injunctions in to block this kind of content from ever being seen in the EU, in England, in Germany, in whatever country they want, and even America. They just need a big enough panic to make it seem justified. And then of course there's the rewriting of history. Like I mentioned before, this is the most accurate story to the one that Graham had mentioned earlier. This is the one that best reflects the story that he is comparing Adolescence to. But this is not the same boy as this one up here. It's not comparable. Now, if I can play devil's advocate for a minute, I can think of a couple reasons why they might use this actor right here. He has a very boyish shape. He has a very boyish face. He's got boyish hair. He just looks innocent. His entire appearance, he looks, I wouldn't have guessed this kid was 13. I would probably guess around 10. He looks young, he looks innocent, he looks unsuspecting. The point of this movie is to say that the monster is in all boys. Not just people who look like they have the potential to be a monster, but boys in general and as a whole. So I can understand why they didn't use this aspiring astronaut. She then goes to excellently explain that there are two deflections at work. The first one being where to look. Poor white boys are the problem. Meanwhile, the problems created by communities with entirely different cultural values are conveniently brushed aside. We're directed to see the problem a certain way. Don't look over there. Don't look at that form of radicalization. Look over here at this other form of radicalization. And that's why they're pointing to the manosphere. The real problem in society is feminism and using that to demonize and ostracize young men. The manosphere is the solution, but if you demonize the manosphere and you prop up controlled opposition like Andrew Tate, you can best create a toxic ideology built around it that you can then use to point to say, look, this is what they really believe. They really think that women shouldn't be allowed to vote. No, there are some good arguments. And really push that aggressive anti-male narrative. And it's also worth saying that the manosphere isn't radical. I'm not a radical, my friends aren't radical, and we do some manosphere talk, though manosphere is admittedly kind of cringe. But most of it isn't a radical stance, it is a normal centrist stance. I want men and women to be treated approximately equal according to their ability. I don't want men to be able to go out there and rape with impunity. That's what the left wants, from certain ethnic groups anyway. I simply want to be able to go out of my house without being told that I'm a monster just because I was born with quite the nice cock. And so we're the ones who are demonized instead of the actual radicals. And then she added a second point, and it's the question of who's to blame. See, the politicians and institutions who have presided over and failed to tackle rising knife crime, the failure of multicultural integration, and underfunded chaotic schools are not to blame. Instead, white working class lads are to blame. And guess what? There is a solution ready to unfurl like a standard in battle. The Online Safety Act. What a relief! You see, they're using this as a way to say, let's protect the children, because when someone says, let's protect the children, they're doing the opposite. But it can't be because men and boys are being demonized and ostracized. That can't be why. It's not the old idiom that if you call someone a monster long enough, they'll live long enough to prove you right. It can't be that idea. It's just because they're inherently toxic. And the absolute idiocy of saying that it's a problem and then continuing to use the kind of rhetoric that created the problem in the first place. We are literally creating the chicken-egg situation because every single time they try to address this, they're just laying more eggs. And I think it's deliberate as well. And their ideas of dealing with knife crime is, like Idris Elba said, just take the tip off so you can't stab someone easily. But you can still cut, you can still force it through because a dull knife is more dangerous than a sharp knife most of the time. And most importantly, it can't be because of the mass immigration of people who actively hate the UK and want to turn it to their home nations. Last time I checked, it's not white innocent boys who are trying to reinstate Sharia law. Dodsworth then continued to say that Netflix is shaping policy. Perhaps politicians are more susceptible to TV entertainment than white working class boys are to the manosphere. Who can forget Matt Hancock admitting that the film Contagion influenced how he planned to the COVID vaccine rollout. Mass media shapes your perception of reality, but that perception isn't reality, she continues. Start noticing how Netflix and other dramas reflect not the world as it is, but the world our elites would have us believe in. And this is one of the things that really woke me up to a lot of things. Because, for a long time, I was a pretty strong leftist. And funnily enough, it was the CW that kind of made me start questioning things. The first one was in Supergirl, with the character Dreamer, who is a troon, who has a power that can only be passed down through the female line of the family. But as a man who identifies as a woman, for some reason, he still gets the power. Which rightfully angers his sister, who's an actual woman, and somehow she's the bad guy. And then, of course, that plot gets even dumber when they go to a planet, get this, that has radiation that damages only the Y chromosome. But Dreamer can go there just fine despite being a biological man. It's this kind of overt and extreme politicization and push for propaganda within our media that's really killing a lot of things and really forcing it down our throats. And the funny thing is, if you push too hard, you'll wake too many people up, and that's what's happened. You lost people by pushing too hard. If you had just kept on a slow, steady path, just to ease it downward, eventually people aren't going to realize where they moved until they look back. And if you do it right, they never will look back. But Dodsworth isn't the only person astute enough to notice these problems, with another channel called Chad Crowley. And this is why the manosphere is losing, because we do stupid shit like this, but whatever. It's a part of a calculated ideological assault on Western identity and memory. This is not about correcting historical inaccuracies. It is about rewriting our heritage to serve a modern agenda. Netflix, like countless other propagators, is just one small cog in this vast machinery of deception. When these lies pile up, they reshape perception, slowly turning blatant falsehoods into accepted truths. This is how a distorted reality is constructed, one lie at a time. Just like that, remember, the UK, according to the UK right now, black people built Stonehenge. Black people founded the UK. The first monarchs were black. What we have right here is Netflix literally creating the film version of the AI videos claiming that black people found everything and Afrocentrism being real, and pushing that in propaganda, but also pushing the Nation of Islam ideology that white people are inherently the devil and designed by some guy with a really big brain who tried to create slaves and fucked it up. When history is weaponized, the goal is not only to control what people think, but to control who they are. The myth of Cleopatra as a black woman is an attempt to serve the link between us and our ancestors. It erodes the understanding of our true identity, distorts our collective memory, and weakens the connections between past and present, he shared. Similarly, when the race of murderers is deliberately altered in the present, it becomes another tool in this ongoing process of demoralization. Their narrative is twisted, undermining our values and eroding our societal cohesion. And it's not even that it's just happening in the West. Look at Assassin's Creed Shadows, which is trying to prop up their version of Yusuke, the bisexual black mass murderer, as an actual historical account of this man who was in Japan for maybe 15 months at most. They're not pushing this just in the West, they're pushing it everywhere, because the goal is to ultimately rewrite history to be as multicultural as possible while demonizing the people they just dislike. I mean, we have people who unironically believe now that Abraham Lincoln was a black man, who believe that Mozart was a black man, that believes that every single important white person in history was actually a black man. But at the same time, they refuse to accept any of the narratives that would hurt their cause, such as race swapping these real black people who committed atrocities. Or, and here's one of my favorite facts, the first American to ever own a slave was a black man, but you never hear about him, do you? This myth, like so many others, is part of an ongoing assault on Western identity he started. It's a deliberate effort to erase the real history of our civilization and replace it with a fabricated narrative that caters to ideological needs. This is not simply a battle over facts, it is a battle over our cultural roots. It's stripping away our heritage in favor of convenient, politically driven narrative of inclusivity and diversity. Cleopatra's legacy, like all great historical figures, must be understood within the context of her time. To distort her story to serve the political needs of today is to sever the bond that connects us to our past. When the connection is lost, the very foundation of our identity crumbles, he wrote. That is why the battle over history is not just academic, it is existential, it is a fight for our survival. And that's very much true. Whoever controls history controls its future. And it's all being done in service of affirming some kind of movement that is actively and inherently dangerous to the normal society. And then he shared what I find to be one of the most hateful clips from Adolescence, and this one really pissed me off beyond measure. I'd play it, but I don't really know what the copyright situation with Netflix is, so I'll be safe. But basically, it's the main character talking to a therapist, trying to figure out why he might do something like this, why he feels so disenfranchised, what the problems are. And a lot of what it covers in this video is exactly why I'm so glad to be on that Touch Grass show, because it covers a lot of things that we've been passively talking about on the show, since part of the goal is to get one of my good friends, Nate, to finally get some confidence and maybe ask a girl out once in a while. But the topics being discussed in this clip are him saying that he feels ugly, he feels unheard, he feels unappreciated, he feels like there's nowhere for him to go, he feels like he isn't valued and he isn't important and he isn't loved. And what does the therapist do? Well, what any good therapist would. She turns it and makes it about her. I mean, the clip starts off with him saying that he feels ugly, and instead of doing anything about it, she just continues to obfuscate what she's trying to ask him in response. She's doing absolutely nothing to help him, and at one point, he's accurate in saying that she's putting words in his mouth, and this is one of the problems with therapy right now. Now, I got yelled at by my good friend Theo for using the word gynocentric, but therapy and the schooling system are incredibly gynocentric, or just means woman focus. It is designed to punish men who have problems. And the funny thing is, he's supposed to be the villain, he's supposed to be evil, he's supposed to be a murderer, and yet he's being proven right by every single scene in this movie. But really, this is one of the most important topics to discuss because it is one of the biggest problems in our modern day society. This is what's being praised, this is what's being highlighted as reality, and this is what is being used to destroy the lives of every single young boy in the West, to demonize them, make them hate themselves. This stuff like this show is the reason why the male loneliness epidemic exists. The stuff like this show is the reason why male suicide rates are so high. This is all that's being done here, and even that clip that just played, where it just shows this white boy being beaten up by all the diverse girls in his school, is being done for a purpose, to show that he is still the problem. I remember what it was like when I was a teenager to be demonized just for the fact that I was going through normal male puberty. I remember what it was like to be demonized, and I just wish for 5 minutes a feminist could know what it's like to deal with that level of pure hatred for just existing. But they never will, and that's probably the biggest problem here, is they claim to have empathy, but they share none with us. But if you stuck around for this long, because I know this was a long one, I really appreciate it. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about it. If you want to hear more about Adolescence, please go check out the podcast my friend Theo Snodgrass did. I'm going to leave a link in the comments. I wasn't on that episode, but my friends did a great job talking about it for the brief amount of time they did, and if you like it, please come back for more. But that's pretty much all I've got, so I will see you guys on the next one.